Hi, and welcome to Biteable Live. My name's Jared, and today I'm joined by our wonderful and talented man in London, Ben. Ben, welcome.
Hi,
Ben.
everybody. Hello.
Ben's our resident expert when it comes to all things Biteable app, audio, visual, creating videos. And the reason we say that is because we think Ben's probably produced more Biteable videos than anybody else. If there's one Biteable staff member that appreciates what it is to be a user and a customer of Biteable, it's going to be Ben.
I
So
feel your
today's
pain.
show, today's show is all around audio. What we're going to do is give you all the hints, tips, and tricks we can, or that Ben can really, to get the audio absolutely perfect for your Biteable video. As always, we're live. So if you've joined us live, feel free to take this opportunity to drop a comment below. If it's around audio or any other real Biteable tips you'd like to ask Ben, please drop them in the comments and we'll try to feed them into the show for you. If you just want to let us know where you're dialing in from or connecting from, it's always nice to see the different cities and countries. And of course, just the casual social media like always makes us feel good. So enough from me. Let's get straight into talking around the audio behind your Biteable video. So to set the scene, Ben, what's, how important is audio to our videos that we make on Biteable?
Well, I used to work in animation, and some of the other animators used to say that audio makes up about 80% of any animation. And they basically meant that if you have good sound, it means you can get away with some really terrible animation, as long as the sound effects and the music and the dialogue is really good. I think it's no different for when you're doing a Biteable video. Obviously, you're not having sound effects or anything like that, but music is incredibly important to your video, because what you're doing is you're projecting some kind of image to or a personality to the people who are watching your video, that's really important for your branding and for the message you're trying to get across.
Fantastic. So I guess as a default, then, what we're talking with the Biteable videos, we're thinking about the music that we put behind that video. So like you said, it's worthwhile putting a little bit of consideration into what that music's, the personality, and I guess the emotion that music's going to impart on the viewer of the video.
Absolutely. It's as important, if not more important, than something like having good design or using consistent colors or anything like that. Music is one of those sort of unspoken things that nobody really sort of seems to understand the importance of it, I think, because it can convey so much of your message that is something it's almost an unconscious thing that you're communicating to your audience. In a way, you're sort of telling them what to feel about your video. And if you've ever watched a film, which obviously everyone would have, you'll notice there's almost there's no time in films really when there's no music, it's very rare. And usually, if there's no music, they're trying to do something, and it's often you'll find in a good horror film, for example, they might choose to have no music at all. And the reason they do that is because it's quite unsettling, because we're so used to sort of the comfort of music going on that when it's not there, we're really aware of it, and it becomes very unsettling. And that's probably why it's a really good idea to, or one of the really good reasons to have good audio, good music on your videos.
I like that. So yeah, you end up in this really weird situation. If you don't put a music track behind your Biteable video, you might actually be inadvertently creating a huge amount of tension in the viewer's mind, even though they maybe aren't aware of it at all. So
that's right. It's super creepy to have no music, basically.
I love that. That's fantastic. So, and obviously, I mean, the movie thing, straight away you start to think about how much, some of the great sort of background musics and things. I was thinking of the movie The Holiday, where Jack Black talks about Jaws with the durna, and you think, well, yeah, it was just, put a happy little xylophone soundtrack behind that shark, and all of a sudden it's not so scary.
That's right. And that's a classic example of where you're telling the audience what they should be feeling at that moment. And it'll sort of build any feeling that you want the audience to have. So if you're trying to make your audience be have a lot of confidence in you, then if your music is happy and confident, then the audience is going to feel that too. Also, one other thing that music really does is it helps people retain the message a lot better than if it was just text or something like that, because they're actually experiencing an emotion that will go along with what they're watching. And it's a bit like if you've ever smelled a very familiar smell that you haven't smelled for a really long time. That it will bring up some memories of a time long ago, and music is as powerful as that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've read lots of articles that sort of suggest that, and you experience every day. So, I guess the other thing for a Biteable video, particularly, is if we're not using music, I guess voiceovers are the other option, right? So, when and where do I choose between using a voiceover and music, or what should I be looking to do?
Voiceovers are a tricky one, actually. They can be absolutely brilliant. They can actually be better than music in some respects because it will really add so much more personality to your video, and that's almost doing something different. But it's a double-edged sword because it can also have the effect of putting people off if they don't like the voice, or if the voice is sort of like a little bit annoying to them, or something like that. And music can be better by itself without a voiceover because it can be a bit it can be sort of a little bit characterless in that it's not coming from a male or a female or any particular race, or it's just this sort of almost it's a very characterless thing in a way. So
Yeah,
that
I can imagine if I do a voiceover, then all of a sudden there's an Australian accent that's going to impact people's mind's eye. So if you're not used to an Australian accent, all of a sudden that's going to be quite raspy and grating to listen to, which I hope isn't the case with me, but I've got to be realistic. It probably is. So.
Absolutely. I'm an Australian living in London, and I've heard a few people sort of not enjoy the Australian accent too much.
Brilliant. All right. So in the Biteable app then, and what we're doing, I mean, how do we choose the right music? Like, I mean, okay, we want to use music, so how do we choose the right music for our video?
I think a really good experiment, or a really good technique actually, is to think of a person that you would want your business to be represented by.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you are, for example, you're an accountancy firm. So you can imagine that the person you would want your viewers to be seeing you as is someone probably a little bit conservative. You don't want sort of a wild child doing your accounts and driving off on their motorcycle with their black leather jacket on. You want someone in a suit who's good at what they do, and maybe goes to bed at 8:30 at night, and that doesn't spend a lot of time sort of partying or anything like that. So you imagine, say, let's use the accountancy example. Imagine someone like that, and imagine what sort of music that person would listen to. In that case, I think it would be something that inspires a bit of confidence, but it's something quite safe and conservative. And in fact, if you're looking for a track in that sort of vein, it's a really good word to search for if you're using an online, if you're buying music from a website. You use the word corporate because that's a very common word that people use to describe that sort of music. And there's a whole genre of music out there under the umbrella of corporate, and it all sounds vaguely similar. So it instills sort of confidence, but it's also very safe and not too dangerous.
Fantastic. So if we're doing that searching, are we looking at free music or stock music, or are we creating our own music? What should we be doing there?
Well, if you're using Biteable, Biteable actually has a really great selection of tracks in our library, and they're all available to free users. It's if you are making a video, it's a really good idea to just look through the Biteable library first, because there are some fantastic tracks there. Maybe we should go into Biteable, and I'll take you through some of my favorite tracks.
That'd be awesome.
So
And while you bring that up on your screen, I just shout out to Stacey, who's interested in voiceover. So Stacey, we will get to voiceovers in a little bit. We've got a few semi-advanced tips and tricks on that side. So stay tuned. Probably about 20 minutes into this, we'll get to voiceovers and cover that for you. If you've got questions while we're doing it, drop them into the chat, or if want some clarity, and we'll try to get to that as well.
Okay, so I'm just going to switch over to the audio in Biteable, and here's a list of our tracks. So the first one I would go to is actually the corporate one we've got. So this track here is it's exactly what I was talking about before. It's nice and safe, and there's no surprises there, but it's reasonably competent music. It sort of inspires confidence in the viewer. If you're a different sort of business, let's say you're a cafe or a nightclub even, or something like that, then you would probably use a sort of a cooler track, something that's a bit more funky. So there's a great track in Biteable. If we go to the funk section, and this driving disco one is great. It has a driving beat to it, which I always like. When I'm picking music for my Biteable videos, I like to choose tracks that have have sort of a high beat count to them, because you want you want to impart the feeling that something's happening, that this is something to have a bit of confidence in. So if you're a tech firm or something like that, I'm thinking of a business like Google or something like that. What you're trying to do is tell people that you're cutting edge, and you're fun, and you're sort of you're basically somebody who is sort of at the forefront of technology. So you would have some kind of music that is probably quite experimental, but it still sounds good. It's not horrible experimental. And we've actually got a track like that, which is called Make It Fun.
I struggle a little bit, so I like to find out which ones are, and these are popular ones on Biteable, or what's the most popular one? I don't know. We probably do track it, but in your opinion, what's the one you see the most of?
There's one in particular that is incredibly good, because it's a really good all rounder, because it's incredibly cheerful and it's upbeat, and you do see this one in so many videos. It's called Ultimate Clappy. That is a fantastic one for almost any purpose, really. I'd highly recommend checking that one out.
Fantastic. So, okay, so we've got a library in Biteable, and there's a bunch of music videos we want to select from there, or we can select from there. What do we do if we want to look at stock audio? Like, where do we go, and also how do we use that within Biteable?
Well, With Biteable, if you're on a free account, you can't upload your own tracks. But if you're on a premium account, you can upload your own tracks. So I've actually used a few different sites for some stock music,
Yeah,
and one of them, well, I think the one of the best I've found is called Audio Jungle. Um, I'll just switch to that on my screen so you can see it.
fantastic. And we'll get Nick, the producer, to drop the link in for these as we go, so that people can easily find them after they've watched the video.
Yeah. We actually, on our blog, we do have an article called How to Find Royalty Free Music. And it has a really good mix of choices there where that we've basically done all the hard work for you and found all the best sites for completely free music and what they call royalty free music. The difference between those is you don't have to pay anything for some royalty free music, but you do have to attribute it to the author of the music at the end of your video or something like that. And most of the time we sort of don't want to do that. Because it's sort of taking up valuable space. So what we want to do is get free music, completely free music, and we've got in our article. The problem with completely free music is it tends to be quite awful, and if it's not, then it's probably very overused, and you've probably heard it before, which is again why Biteable is a really good choice. But if you go to somewhere like Audio Jungle, my favorite site for stock music, the songs actually don't cost very much. It's something like $19 American for a track, and that's really good value as far as I'm concerned, because you then get to use that song depending on the license, but you can use that song as many times as you like.
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea to pay, both from a general, betterment of society, so paying money back to the artist, but also as a business, it gives you that confidence. Although, I'm not a lawyer and this is not legal advice, but knowing that you've paid the artist gives you that sense of, actually, we've got the right to do it. And the last thing you want to do if you're a business, or you're doing it for a business, is get yourself into an intellectual IP battle where it turns out you've used music you don't have the rights to. So paying something is always good. And I think it, as well, if you are a business, you get to, like you said before, you get to attach your brand to that song, and hopefully not everyone's heard it before, which I guess has a chance of cheapening a little bit the video if people say, oh, I've heard that track before, it was used in a dog food commercial. So
yeah,
fantastic. Oh, that's awesome. And great. Well, I guess the next thing for us to have a look at is to start chatting around voiceovers, which, in my opinion, is probably one of the most underused techniques that people could do on their audio, particularly when we think about explainer videos. So these are the videos that maybe run for 3 minutes. You put them on your website and they explain what your business does. Hugely popular reason that people use Biteable. But I'm often surprised that people aren't doing voiceovers. And I guess the reason is that it's a bit tricky. It takes a bit more time, a bit more effort. It's not as simple as there's a backing track. You've actually got to put the time in to create a script, record your voice, and go through that process. So I'm really keen to hear from you, Ben. Like, if I want to do sort of my voiceover, is there software that that you recommend that we should be using to do, I guess, to record our voices and edit it?
Absolutely. There's a fantastic piece of software out there. It's completely free. It's freeware called Audacity. So a friend of mine put me onto this years ago, and I've basically never used anything else since, because it's one of those programs that's incredibly simple to use for someone who doesn't really know much about this stuff, because obviously there's a lot of professional programs out there that are incredibly complex, and you'll have to spend years learning it. But Audacity is one where you almost can use it straight away. So
I'm looking at your screen now, Ben, and it looks a little bit imposing when you first look at it. There's an awful lot going on the screen. So, but I assume it's not as hard as it maybe looks at first.
What I've done here is I've actually got 2 different tracks up. So what I've done is I've opened Audacity, and then I've just got an MP3 file on my desktop, and I've just dragged it straight into this grey window here. And when you do that, this thing here will come up, and it will sort of show you all the peaks in the music and all that kind of stuff, which can be really handy when you're editing. And it's really easy to then edit this stuff because first of all, you go up to this tool here, which is the selection tool, which is pretty much, I'm not sure that I actually use any other tools except for the play button and the stop button and things like that. So what you do is you get the selection tool up, and then you just select the piece of music that you're trying to do something with. And for example, here I've just selected that, and I'm just going to delete it. So I've deleted that now, and you can also do lots of cool stuff now. If the music ends a bit abruptly there, you can select this little bit, and you can go up to effect, and you can do a fade out on it. So that will automatically make that fade out to nothing, which is incredibly handy. So I've got two tracks here on my screen, and one of them is a music track, which is this one here. And the other one is a voiceover track. And so what you can do is you can record your own voice, which you can do with your own computer. Most laptops or computers will have a microphone built in, but I would actually recommend buying a microphone. We've actually got a good blog article about microphones and what the best microphones are, which I'll get Nick to put up in the feed so that you can see what some of the best microphones we recommend are. Yeah, so if you've gone and recorded your voice, and you've got the track up here, you can actually change the volumes of it, of the music and the voice in the mix. Use this little slider down here, and you can take the music down and make your voice louder in the mix. Once you've done that, there's probably quite a bit of fiddly stuff that you'll need to do with the timing of it. And I find it's a really good idea to put your Biteable video up without any sound on it, and then mark out the spots, the timing of the spots where you want to put in different vocal bits. And you might actually record your vocals in chunks rather than one long thing, so that you can position them really easily or reposition them really easily if you find they're not hitting their marks properly.
I know, and I think you covered, I don't know if you did mention it, Ben, but the thing about Audacity is it's free, right?
Yes, that's right. There is one thing that you do need to remember about Audacity, though, and that's that you're unable to export an MP3 straight out of Audacity, but when you try and do that, it will actually prompt you to download a plugin that will allow you to do that, and that's free as well. But just wanted to let the listeners know that that's what you have to do.
Fantastic. I mean, my contribution to this would be around the recording of the quality of recording. So we've discussed on previous episodes getting the right equipment, and we've definitely blogged on Biteable. So we'll share a link about microphones and picking the right podcasting microphone, because if you are going to do a voiceover, I guess the quality of that voice recording is absolutely crucial. The other thing is, after you've sort of picked the right microphone, and we've discussed the type of hardware we use, the Blue Yeti, that's my personal preference. The other big tip for me is considering using a pop filter. So I'm not using one today. The quality that comes over Facebook Live doesn't really warrant it. But if you are going to produce and explain a video, then a pop filter makes a big difference. Now, what a pop filter is it's simply a filter that you put over. It's a physical filter that you put over the top of your microphone. And the reason you do that is when you say things like your P's, there's a tendency for you to expel a short burst of air, and that hits the microphone and it creates that popping noise. And that's just, it's sort of it doesn't feel great in your ears when you hear that. And so I've got an example here. So this is basically, it's a little bit of foam I purchased on eBay. I think it's cost me about $6 or $7. And this will go over the top of your microphone. And the idea is, as the blast of air hits the foam, it disperses it and stops you from getting that really harsh popping sound. Like if you're doing that tongue twister, Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers or something to that effect, it'll get rid of that. So you can buy one quite cheap. $6 will make a massive difference and just avoids those really high peaks that you might hear in your audio recording. The other option, if you want to go a little bit crazy, is to pick one of these, which is the ones you see a bit more in professional recordings. And this is just a thin membrane, has the same function. It looks a little bit garish. You'd never use it on a podcast, or, you're going to lose your entire face there. Slightly more professional. I think it's about $20. But again, the only reason you're using it is to stop those harsh peaks that come through as you're talking. I guess if you're a professional, you probably don't make those noises anyway. But it's not much money to spend, but it can make a massive difference to that recording quality. If you're just using a PC microphone, there's no need to do that. You're not going to have that problem. But if you've invested $150 or so on a microphone, it's going to pick up those harsh P sounds. So a pop filter, if you spend $150, another $6, $7 is probably a sound investment. And it makes a big difference. But I guess the other thing, if you want a really tricky way to kind of record that audio, is to watch your video in the background and talk to it at the same time. If you're not the kind of person that wants to read off a script and follow it through exactly, actually going through and recording your voice at the same time as you're watching the video might be the lazy approach or the hack to get around it and get that recorded for you. I know I've done that a couple of times. It's not perfect, but if you've only got 15 minutes and you want to have it done in one go, that might be the way to get around it. So I'm just having a look at the time. So we've pretty much managed to fill a half-hour show, including me disappearing for a little bit. Ben, is there anything, I know there's a lot that you could obviously share with people. Is there anything that you wanted to share now that maybe we've missed as a last tip or bit of advice for somebody?
I think when you're trying to do audio for your video, it's probably a really good idea to look at what other people have done, especially people who have spent a lot of money on it, because they're the ones who have done a lot of research into what's going to come across the best in that field. So that's definitely a good sort of money-saving thing when you're doing any sort of marketing, is to sort of look at what the big boys are doing and then see if you can do it on a budget.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today, Ben. I've learned a lot. I've also learned that I can't rely on some software to make things work, but that's the fun of this. Hopefully, what I'd love to see is for people who are using Biteable to have a go at voiceovers. I think that would be an exciting thing. And I guess the other big lesson is to take some time to really get in your mind's eye who that person is that you might be trying to represent with your music, and just spend a little bit more time on your music. So rather than just sort of picking one track and then just pushing your Biteable video out, maybe investing, 10, 20% of the time making the video, actually picking the right music might make all the difference for you. So that's a wrap from us. Ben, thank you so much for joining us from London. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. We will be back again next week with more Biteable Live. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.